Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this timely conversation, How to Become a GOTV Machine. My name is Thomas Varela, serve as the Executive Director for the New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition. And we're excited for this timely conversation as we know we have an historic election. And because of the historic nature of this election, there's a lot of activations and activities, but it's really important that as individuals that represent nonpartisan organizations, that we remain focused on that nonpartisanship and really make sure that as we think about get out the vote efforts, that we're following rules and protocols that we don't ensure that we to ensure that we don't get our organizations in trouble. And so, as we know, as a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, I know that calling when it's time to call all organizations, all sororities, all fraternities to the floor. And so we wanted to really make sure that we lean into our D9 and all of our Black and civic associations that are doing this work to make sure that they have the information that they need so that they can be effective. And so at this time, I want to invite our partners that help to bring this event to fruition to the floor so that they can introduce themselves and the work that they do. So I want to have Soror Monica Townsend from Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated to introduce herself.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Townsend, and I'm the State Social Action Coordinator for Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And I bring you greetings from our State Director, Kim Yada M. Pitts. We are excited to partner with the New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition for this webinar and a few other webinars in the past. Zeta is a community conscious, action-oriented organization where our principles are scholarship, service, sisterhood, and finer womanhood. So we know that you're going to walk away with a lot of great information to be a GOTV machine, and also to bring back that information to continue to mobilize your communities around voting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We want to have Natalie Guy, I see that you just joined. Would you like to say a few words on behalf of the Social Action Committee of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated?
Greetings, everyone, and my apologies. I am still traveling home from work, and so my background is loud and my camera is not on, but I am here, engaged and excited. I bring greetings from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I serve as the state chair for Connection and Social Action for New Jersey, and we are super excited to continue this amazing partnership that we brokered this year, and looking forward to additional opportunities in these next 20-ish days to really get out the vote and make this an election one for the history books. So really, again, thank you for the creative programming. Thank you for the opportunity to join efforts in the service we're doing in our communities, and we look forward to November 5th.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Definitely appreciate the collaboration. And finally, we'll have sororist Nali join us on the screen.
Good evening, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Liz Nali. I am a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where I serve as our Cluster 4 co-coordinator and president of the Phi Eta Omega chapter serving Scotch Plains. But tonight, I'm here representing the National Pan-Hellenic Council of Central New Jersey, where I serve as parliamentarian and I co-chair the Social Action Committee. So I don't know, Thomas has been a great partner of ours, and I see a lot of our partners on the line tonight. I'm just really excited to share some tools and opportunities with everyone tonight in terms of how to get involved.
Great, thank you very much. And as you know, the Soror Nali has been, and her team, Frada Dow and others have been instrumental in really mobilizing the state to think about GOTV and really being involved in nonpartisan voter participation. Definitely encourage you to follow them and the work that they're doing around voter participation. I know November 2nd is a big day for this initiative. And so there are nonpartisan get out the vote phone banking that is happening in Central Jersey and North Jersey. And so definitely encourage you to tap in with the work that they're doing in Central Jersey, and PHC. And so, as I mentioned, my name is Tom Zerell. I serve as the Executive Director of the New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition. We're a statewide nonprofit at the intersection of policy, democracy, and voter empowerment. Simply put, we focus on civic education, voter education, and policy education rooted in racial justice. And so today, we have our presentation that we would like to begin to talk about the importance of nonpartisan voter engagement. Want to do a quick check? Can everyone see me? Can see the presentation? Great. So how to become a one-person GOTV machine. This is the activist training that we did in collaboration with the League of Women Voters. So a quick slide on the League of Women Voters. Many of you know who they are. They've been around for decades doing nonpartisan GOTV efforts to ensure that citizens understand the way that government works and encourage active participation. And I quickly talked about the work that we do. We help educate key stakeholders and the broader public about relevant policy issues. And a quick disclaimer, we will make sure to have time at the end to entertain any questions. So I do want to apologize in advance. We do have a good amount of slides, but we really want to make sure that we save time for questions at the end. So as you can see, these are some of the action items that we'll be discussing this afternoon or this evening, talking about barriers, how to combat against misinformation, and what does GOTV even mean. And so, as we know, what are some of the reasons that people don't vote or may choose not to vote? For many, voting requires time and energy. Just knowing what's on the ballot can be intimidating for some individuals. As we sometimes hear in our community, many believe that their vote will not be effective or their vote does not count. But then we also know there are systemic barriers that exist that can prevent our communities from participating in the fundamental right, which is voting, which can sometimes resonate in our community when we think about those barriers. For others, you would think about language access, voter registration deadline, gerrymandering. These are all reasons that individuals are not participating that are more systemic in nature. Voter intimidation. I think sometimes in New Jersey, we may not always think about some of these barriers, but when we think about our frat brothers and sorority sisters in different chapters in the different states, they're dealing with some of these barriers. So it's always important to keep that in mind when we think about voter participation. And so that's one of the reasons why we don't always want to shame people when we think about why they may not be voting. It can be tough, especially when we think about some historic elections where we believe that everyone should be all hands on deck in terms of voter participation, but sometimes others may not feel as compelled. So it's really important that we don't assign blame. It's really important to focus on strategies to combat apathy and make sure that when you're thinking about the apathy, how do we flip that into action? Excuse me. So we commonly hear GOTV, and as you may or may not know, simply put, GOTV is short for Get Out the Vote. The goal of GOTV is to drive voters to the poll. Ultimately, the goal is the accumulation of voter outreach. All the voter registration drives, webinars lead to 2 to 3 weeks of Get Out the Vote. As we know in New Jersey, the voter registration deadline just passed, which was October 15th. And so with that, now you will see a lot of efforts being focused on voter mobilization, in some cases voter protection, and then also voter education, because some folks may be registered to vote, but they may not actually go out to vote because, as we know, the couch can be comfortable for a lot of people. And the goal is to think about how to combat against that. And so why does GOTV matter? It actually works. It's the fundamental purpose of our government is to respond to the will of the people. And so many times voter turnout, when it's low, can create this sense of apathy in our community, but more importantly, it can create a sense of status quo and this feeling of things don't change. So voting is our way of responding to our government. And more importantly, voting is our tool to communicate to our elected officials and our public servants that we are monitoring the work that they're doing. More importantly, we are reminding elected officials and public servants that they work on behalf of the constituents, i.e. on behalf of the voters. So sometimes we see campaigns that are working very hard to do voter turnout. We recognize that in this current election, former President Trump, Vice President Harris, and their campaigns are spending millions and millions of dollars with campaign ads, with ads, with infomercials, with mailers, all trying to mobilize their voters to vote on behalf of them. So you may be thinking, I'm just one individual, or I work with a small chapter, or I'm with a small group. How can I really compete with millions and millions of dollars that's being flooded in our district or in our state? And so it's really important to not allow that to influence you in a negative way. And there are opportunities for you to still do your part as an individual. As we know, large get out the vote efforts require time, money, and a team to implement. But what can you do as an individual member? There's ways for you to harness your own network for digital and traditional nonpartisan GOTV effort. And one of the ways that you do that is to develop a voter action plan. Typically, we recognize that we are kind of doing these things, but we may not always conceptualize that as an actual plan. And so when you talk to people about helping them know which way they want to vote, helping them know where they're going to vote, that is developing your action plan. So step one of an action plan that you would want to check is asking someone, are they registered to vote? As we acknowledge, October 15th is the deadline for this 2024 general election, but typically you are asking people, are they registered to vote? Once they confirm that they are registered to vote, you may want to ask them, do they plan to vote by mail or do they plan to vote in person? Historically, our community has been very tried and true to vote in person, but we're finding more and more individuals leveraging the comfort and convenience of voting by mail. And so you want to ask individuals that they understand which way they hope to vote. You want to confirm the details of voting. If they plan to vote in person, do they want to vote during the early voting period, or do they plan to vote on election day? Once again, New Jersey does offer a time frame for individuals to vote early. If by mail, you will want to ask them, are they going to be voting? Do they plan to apply for their application by mail, or will they go to one of their county offices to request a mail ballot that they can submit? Once again, then you want to ask them when they plan to cast their ballot. If they're going to do it in person, you know, if it's on the early voting period, you want to ask them what day do they plan to vote, what time, or if they plan to vote in person, you may want to confirm with them ways that to confirm that they know exactly where they're going to vote. You may want to ask them to check in advance if they know exactly where they're going to vote in terms of their address and their polling location. And then once again, if they're going to vote by mail, making sure that they're prepared with the deadlines. One helpful tip is that as you get closer to election day, you may be more compelled to drop off your ballot at a county ballot place, because if you happen to put it in the mail and it doesn't get received by the county office by the deadline, then the vote may not count. And so you do want to keep that in mind. As you get closer to election day, it is more important to drop your ballot off at a county box or at the county office. But if you have your ballot now or soon thereafter and you want to drop it off in the mail, it will typically arrive in time. But do keep that in mind. And then once again, you know, want to continue to confirm those details. And then encourage other people to have that conversation, encourage them to have 3, 5, 7, 9 people as they think about how to multiply their impact. So these are some of like the steps that you would do when you think about voter participation and getting someone from being registered to actually casting their ballot. But there's a term that you may not have heard about called relational organizing. as we know, the world is based on relationships. We're more inclined to do something based off the recommendations of someone that we know versus a celebrity versus even a campaign, right? Sometimes we see celebrity endorsements or celebrity, will make their opinion about a candidate, and we sometimes believe that the celebrity will have influence, but most people are actually going to respond. Most people are going to make the decision if they're going to vote based off the recommendations of someone in their neighborhood, a trusted messenger, someone that they believe is doing the work. And most times, good organizing is built on relational organizing. And so typically, relational organizing that we typically see is door-to-door knocking, right? So you see typically organizations will go door-to-door or campaigns will go door-to-door, having the conversations with the neighborhood about the value of voting. And as we said, campaigns will do it because they're trying to figure out if someone's going to vote for them specifically, trying to convince them to vote. Being able to build off those relationships is key when you think about relational organizing, and it can help create more effective and it can be more effective and yield better results because you have opportunity to contact individuals. You have ability to create better conversion rates, i.e., convert someone from a non-voter to a voter, or convert someone from saying, yes, I'm registered, but I don't plan to vote, but to someone that will actually vote. And so there are opportunities where you may be able to leverage sample messaging, sample letters to the editors and op-eds, scripts, social media posts, and flyers. And so that's why it's important that you plug in with organizations that do some of this large-scale organizing. As I mentioned, I know the NPHC of Central Jersey has been very active in creating all the tools and resources. So all you got to do is copy and paste. Definitely want to shout out Sorority Nali for that, because I know she's been kind of behind the scenes providing all the tools and resources to ensure that all that you need to do can be done very easily. And so that's why it's really important to plug in with organizations that are able to give you resources. I know all of our Divine Nine organizations, our NPA, National Coalition of 100 Black Women, 100 Black Men, and all the Black civic associations that do this work are providing those resources. But there are also ways that you as an individual can participate in relational organizing. This is now in this moment where many folks are not always comfortable going door to door, or they recognize that going door to door takes a lot of time. There are actually tools and resources that you can leverage that allow you to do relational organizing. And so one is Outreach Circle with the League of Women Voters. This is part of their national tool that I know New Jersey's chapter is able to leverage. And so it's a digital relational organizing tool for organizations that allow you to be able to engage with your community. For us, we have the Empower Project. We and New Jersey Black Empowerment Coalition we use the Empower Project because they have a focus and priority on helping to boost voter turnout, especially in BIPOC communities through relational organizing. And so once again, that is the practice of tapping into personal networks of friends and family to create change. And so I'll pause for a quick second. If you want to take out your phone and scan the QR code, you will be able to join the D9 Votes Empower tool. And so once again, this will allow you to participate for free in relational actions. So essentially, you will receive notifications through the app that will encourage you to contact your friends and encourage them to go through the prompts. So essentially, the prompts are already predetermined. All you have to do is contact your friends, follow the prompts, and you are actively participating in relational organizing. And more importantly, you will be joining the D9 Votes campaign and their efforts around nonpartisan voter participation. And once again, the presentation will be given to you. So if you don't have time to scan the QR code now, you will be given this presentation and you'll be able to do it at a later date. So combating mis and disinformation. If you don't mind, we will take all questions towards the end just because I'm sharing my screen and it's easier for me to navigate in this way. So we know that American people, particularly those in historically disenfranchised communities, are being constantly bombarded with lies and misleading information. We saw in 2016, Congress had to actually do a hearing where they came out with a report that actually talked about foreign agents targeting African Americans with mis and disinformation to sow distrust in our community, sow distrust in the democratic process, right? I think one of the things that we know in this moment is that voting is imperative. And so if you see messaging that tells you to not vote, you do have to question that, right? There's one thing if the messaging is encouraging you to vote for one party or the other, that's your prerogative to determine which party you want to support and which way you want to cast your ballot. But whenever you hear information about people encouraging our community not to participate, you have to ask yourself, why is it that our community is being asked not to actually participate in our fundamental right as an American, which is the voting process? And so the job that we have to do as organizational leaders, as trusted messengers, is how do we mitigate the spread of falsehood by building trust in our elections and make sure that we're spreading good information. And I bring that up because as you are doing your GOTV efforts, you will be potentially responding to individuals that may be conveying mis and disinformation. And so you want to be well equipped, but to be able to do it in a nonpartisan way. So there's two terms. There's misinformation and there's disinformation. And those are two different things. So misinformation is sharing false information without the intent of harm. So that may be you just shared a video that you saw just because you thought it was valid and didn't realize that it's false information. Whereas there's disinformation, whereas people are creating and sharing false information with the intent to harm. So it's important to understand that distinction. Sometimes you may share something just because you thought it made sense or you thought that it was actually valid. You didn't have any intent to confuse people. That's misinformation. Whereas there are others that are sharing information purposely because they want to harm the audience that is viewing that information. And so many of us in our community more than likely will be sharing misinformation if they are sharing information. But we are seeing in this current climate that many of our communities actually sharing disinformation. And so that's important to kind of think about as well, because when you see individuals in our community that you may believe are trusted messengers sharing disinformation, that can be harder to navigate. So one of the things to keep in mind when you think about mis and disinformation is never quote bad information. You want to make sure that you refer to the bad information without repeating it. And why do I say that? Is because social media responds to the repeat, right? So the way the algorithms work, if you're not aware, as you share information, you're telling the algorithms, this is good information that you want to see again. And so as more and more of this bad information gets shared, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., their system says, oh, this information is popular. Those platforms are not focused on sharing right or wrong. They're focused on sharing what's popular, even if it's bad or good. So it's important to keep that in mind, that the algorithms focus on popularity, not accuracy. And so you want to make sure that you are knowledgeable on of the trusted resources, so that when you are sharing stuff, you're sharing it from trusted places. And so that's why it's important as leaders that you try your best to follow platforms that are viewed as solid sources of information. You want to try to proactively inoculate against anticipated problematic content before it spreads. Once again, you don't want to spread bad information. And keep in mind that sometimes bad information can come from good people. And once again, that is important to navigate, because how do you have conversation with people that you believe are good people, but they may be very committed to the information that they're sharing? So you want to think about the URL. You may want to look at the about page of a website to make sure that it's valid, that it looks like it's a reputable source. You may want to check the date. Sometimes old news can be a way of knowing that it may be invalid information. Maybe you want to check if other news sources are reporting the same story. So that's why it's important that you are aware of some of those news sources, because if something looks like an outlier and is not being shared by some of those traditional reputable news sources, then you can tell that it may be bad information. Sometimes you got to read past the headline. Don't allow the headline to distract you. Sometimes the headline may not match the content. And then you want to think about emotionally charged content. This information tends to sow division by getting us angry or sad through images or memes. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, if I am very, very angry about this content, there could be a good chance that it could be misinformation. Because as we know, misinformation, disinformation, it's about creating division. So keep that in mind as you think about that. Now, we know there's a lot of stuff out there that we have rightful anger towards, and sometimes that anger can be harnessed for good, but in some cases could be harnessed for bad. So do keep that in mind. So once again, understand the algorithms. Don't click or share information because you help to spread it. Do share accurate information. Sometimes this can be tricky because you want to share accurate information without mentioning the wrong information. Because once again, you share the wrong information, that feeds the algorithms. Don't engage publicly. I think one of the things to keep in mind, especially in this moment where some of our friends and family may be sharing bad information, you don't want to embarrass people, because then sometimes the embarrassment forces them to hunker down with the bad information. And so sometimes you may want to reach out to them privately and ask them if they could take down the information, especially if you can show them that this is bad information. You do want to report and block bad information, particularly on social media. One of the phrases that we say is starve the bots. A lot of information is coming from bots. These bots are from foreign countries. And so they may be presenting themselves as valid people, but it's actually just robotic, computerized AI, or it may be people from foreign countries. So if you can block them and report them, it's a way to starve their ability to share information. How to connect with unlikely voters. Something to keep in mind when we think about unlikely voters or apathetic voters, as we like to say, is to acknowledge their frustration, right? Many times people are able to vote because they're hopeful. Sometimes people vote off of anger. But the feeling that is the most problematic is apathy, because apathy says, ah, man, forget all this. I'm going to throw my hands up and I'm just going to stay on the couch, right? And so we have to, in some cases, acknowledge their frustration, because we know, particularly in Black and Brown communities, we may have valid reasons for being frustrated with our government. They may not have been able to respond to our needs as much as we would hope. So for some communities and some individuals within our communities, their frustration is valid. However, you have to think about, how do we understand the motivation and the issues and their needs, right? And so it's really important when you're having these conversations, ask them, what motivates you? What are the issues that you care about? What are the needs that you have in your community? Because once you can understand their issues, then that helps you to connect their needs and their motivation back to the importance of voting and participation, right? And so if someone is saying, I am really frustrated with the schools in my local community, you are able to then point to, well, voting locally is how you can address who is in charge of your school boards, which can then potentially influence whatever is the issue. Or if someone says, I am really concerned about abortion rights, right? That is a two-pronged approach, because on one hand, that can potentially be a federal issue, but it can also be a state issue. And so that's why it's important that we as leaders have a strong understanding of what are some of the issues at play. Obviously, we may not know everything in total depth, but being able to kind of understand what are some of these issues and then be able to pinpoint, is this a local issue? Is this a federal issue? Or is this a state issue? And in many cases, the policies are all three. Once again, it's important to be patient, because once again, you're dealing with people that may be frustrated. You may be dealing with people that purposely want to tell you, they want to purposely push back, they want to purposely be chaos agents. And so you have to be patient, because if you get riled up and they're already riled up, now we're angry, now we're emotional, and now it's a shouting match, and we're not accomplishing what our goal is to convert them into voters. And more importantly, be authentic. Tell your story about voting. Once again, many times you are talking to people that see you as a trusted messenger and a trusted leader. And so when you can convey with authenticity why you vote in all elections, you may be able to convert them into voters, because they see you as a leader that they want to honor, that they want to make proud of, they want to earn your respect. And so when you can show authenticity as to why you vote, that can help a long way, right? And especially in this moment where folks are very locked into like party, you want to be able to show them voting is beyond party, right? You may vote for whoever party that you're attached to, but we have to communicate that voting is about how you communicate to government. And also, voting is how you kind of help the campaigns respond to your needs, right? I know when we talk to communities, particularly those that are apathetic, we always use the example of a church. The reason that campaigns always go to the church to campaign is because they know the church typically votes, and the church members vote in all elections typically. Same thing with many of us on the call today, our Divine Nine organizations, our Black civic associations. We get the attention of campaigns much more because they know that we vote in all elections. So use that as an example when you're talking to folks that are not connected to our organizations, and honestly tell them that. Like, I think it's important to let them know, yes, campaigns typically respond to us because we show our power through our vote and our civic participation. And so even though you may not be a member of our organization, you can still replicate our level of civic participation. And I think it's important to leverage that, because they may feel that, well, they're being ignored or they may not be heard. And you can show them through our own associations how we've been able to, over the years, bend elected officials and public servants towards the needs of our community, right? I think one of the things, as an example, many of us were able to participate through the D9 Votes initiative and Advocacy Day in Trenton. And on that day, you had elected officials coming to us. They made sure to get on our agenda. I know Sorority can kind of co-sign that, because they saw hundreds of people in the room, and they know, okay, these individuals are not just individuals, these are voters, and they know that they need to respond to us. And so it's really important to not shy away from our collective power as an organization to get folks engaged. And so how do we make things nonpartisan? So one of the things to think about, nonpartisan GOTV. What makes nonpartisan GOTV different? Feel free to put it in the chat if you feel inclined to do so. Once again, we'll save time for comments and questions at the end. I really want to make sure we get through the content. So nonpartisan GOTV, the goal is to focus on getting out the information, the process of voting, the importance of voting. The goal is to increase participation. A way that I tend to say it in Black and Brown communities is that we want to increase the number of super voters in our community. Super voters mean that they vote in all elections. Many times that's twice a year, every year. Nonpartisan means removing barriers that prevent people from voting, right? Once again, it's about participating in the fundamental right of democracy, which we all, if you are a citizen, have the right to be able to do so. And once again, in this hyper-partisan era, there's opportunities for us to be able to connect with those that are left out or put off. And so, something to keep in mind, what happens if a volunteer is accused of being partisan at an event? It's important to keep that focus that in this hyper-partisan time, people may be skeptical about all things nonpartisan. And so you may want to refer back to organizations like the League, your local chapter, that our work is nonpartisan. Our focus is to get everyone registered to vote and actually vote. Many times you may want to use language around, we are not here to discuss any specific policy. We're just here to register as many eligible people and just educate people on the importance of voting. And that's key because many times citizens are not as well versed on the policy, so they may look to you to almost give them the guidance, right? Many times I know you all will have people in your community that will say, tell me who to vote for, right? And so when you are representing your colors, or when you are, more importantly, when you are representing your organization and you have your organization's shield or letters on, you do not want to get into a space where you're telling folks who to specifically vote for. So your goal is to, when you are in conversation, particularly when you're dealing with challenges, you want to validate their underlying thought or emotion. So acknowledge if they feel frustrated. You do want to correct any misinformation, and then you want to redirect them back to the issue at hand, right? And so once again, you may find folks coming in with misinformation that guides their emotion. You want to make sure that you correct that misinformation and direct people back to the issue. And so in this example, you may be able to use examples like, NJ Beck is nonpartisan. We're talking to everyone about voting, not just members of one party. Do you have questions about the voting process? Another language that you can use, NJ Beck is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse any candidates, but we are here to answer any questions you may have about casting your ballot. You may find information about candidates at this website, and many times you may refer them back to your website, or you may refer them to sources like the League of Women Voters. Once again, it's important to know what your main points are. Resist the urge to argue. And if you find that you are at a place that you are arguing, or you find yourself even compelled to start to show who you personally are interested in voting for, it's critical that you take a step back and you just say thank you for their time and have a nice day. Because once again, you don't want to get into a situation where you are sharing your own personal beliefs when you are representing your organization. And so one of the ways that I tend to say it when I think about how do we thread this needle, I will tend to say, if someone is to ask me, so how do you think about voting? I will tend to say, I, as a citizen, or even me, or I as an organizational leader, we tend to look for public servants who care about these issues. And at that point, you could then say these issues include sustainable jobs, or healthcare access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I don't want to speak what your values may be, but I do want to emphasize the language that I use. When I say public servant, right? You're not saying a candidate. As long as you don't say a candidate's name, you are remaining nonpartisan. And so if you are in a situation where people are asking you, what are your values, or how do you think about voting, always use language that is neutral. I tend to value public servants that care about these issues. And so when you say these issues, clearly those are your personal issues, but when you root it back to public servant, you're basically showing the public servant is the neutral piece. These are the values that I care about, and thus I will vote for public servants that reflect my values. Because once again, in this moment where we have history potentially on the line, there is this compelling opportunity to want to chime in, right? And it's funny, I give an example. We co-partnered with the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice to do a youth summit. And so I practiced with some students, and I purposely was partisan. And the one student was quick to jump into their partisan language because of how I responded with my partisan ways, right? And so once again, in this moment, it is easy to jump into our own partisan views, especially because we are, as individuals, preparing to vote and we have our beliefs as to who we want to vote for. So it's always important to kind of thread that needle to remain neutral when you're doing organizational, nonpartisan GOTV efforts. And so we're here towards the end of the presentation. So here are some links that you can take advantage of. Once again, we do have a collection of, we have a civic library of resources, of education curriculum that you can leverage. Once again, we'll make sure that you get the presentation so that you can click the links and take advantage of them. There's also resources from the League of Women Voters. Definitely click on those links. They have nonpartisan voter engagement tools that you can leverage at your disposal, printable material that's provided by nonpartisan organizations. Here's how you can follow us on social media, both myself and the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. With follow us on social media. We encourage you to do so. And so at this time, I want to see if there's any questions from the audience. I'm going to guess that I didn't do that great. And so hopefully there are some questions from the audience, because once again, this is a tricky time for many of us. Liz?
Yeah, so if there aren't burning questions, my question is if we could take a moment. You've mentioned several things that we as the NPHC have been up to, and I would love to share some of those additional resources and activities that your audience can engage in, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, not a problem. I think this will give a time for some folks to actually generate some questions. So we'll definitely use this moment. So feel free to share your screen.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, where's my, I don't know why I can't put this into presentation mode, but so the NPHC.
If you
Yeah,
go to slideshow.
Yeah, I don't see it. My
Okay.
view is weird. I know how to do it. I just don't see
Okay,
it
no problem.
on my screen for some reason. So I'm just gonna
No
keep it moving.
Okay.
But the NPHC, we've been very busy ramping up for the election. We did start in earnest back in September on National Voter Registration Day. And we launched a social media campaign with pretty much an evergreen asset that you can use to encourage people to check their voter registration status. Here in New Jersey, it takes just a minute. You log on to the New Jersey Secretary of State's website, and you can create a free account, and you'll have your entire voting record for every election that you voted on. You can find out whether you are, if you moved, where you're registered to vote, where to vote, and things of that nature. What we found as we've gone out doing this work to register voters is that a lot of people thought they were registered, but they weren't, or they moved and their registration is still associated with an old address or what have you. So this is a great resource on the Secretary of State's website. If the QR code or the bit.ly link there on your screen is not working for you, you can go to vote.nj.gov and check your voter registration status. Then we too partnered with the League of Women Voters to do a free webinar on your voting rights in the state of New Jersey. A lot of people weren't sure, like if I have a special needs child, can I escort them into the polling place? If I'm an immigrant, will ICE come and get me if I register to vote? Like all these things around what your rights are as a voter in the state of New Jersey. That replay is available on our socials, and I'll share those in just a minute. A lot of really good information there. And then we've partnered with Thomas and all the graduate NPHCs across the state of New Jersey to do a social media campaign. And we've got versions of these in all of your favorite organization colors, should you want to share them. And we have what we're calling 7 call to actions. The first one was to register to vote in advance of the deadline. We went out to churches across the state of New Jersey to register voters in real time. The second call to action was to remind people that there are 3 ways to cast their ballot in the state of New Jersey. And then we did a call to action associated with each of those 3 ways. You can vote by mail, you can vote in person at the polls early during the early voting period, or you can cast your ballot on election day. And for the skeptical amongst us, we also have a call to action that encourages people to track their ballot. Did you know, a lot of people didn't know that once they vote, whether you vote, no matter how you vote in the state of New Jersey, you can go onto that same website and check the status of your ballot, where it is, and is it in transit or whatever, to make sure your vote counts. And then we also became very proactive in sharing the Secretary of State's voter registration hotline for voting questions for the state of New Jersey. And so not only did we do social media assets, and we still have these assets, so you could still share them except for like the first one, because that one was time sensitive, but we partnered with NJ Beck to do a special version of their empowerment app to share all 7 of these calls to actions. And what we're asking is, I know my sorority is asking all of our members to take 4 or more to the polls. And so we were like, okay, we're Divine 9, so let's use the app to share these 7 calls to action with at least 9 friends and family to take advantage of all of that, the benefits of relational organizing that Thomas shared tonight. It's a free app. It's really easy to do. And even if you don't like talking to people directly, it's something you could do right from your cell phones. It's a great way to engage our undergraduates, teens, and students, and others in the process in terms of getting the vote out. And the crescendo to all of this is our voter call bank call out day. This is an effort that, and I have to give credit where credit is due, that the brothers of Zeta Nu Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha started 3 years ago. I crashed the party and we made it a statewide thing. And I think we have reached over 70,000 voters during primary and general election. So on Saturday, November the 2nd, it's going to be bigger and better than ever before. We're going to be at 2 locations and virtual. We're going to be at Union College, the Scotch Plains campus, calling voters to remind them to cast their ballot. And we're going to be at the College of New Jersey. And like I mentioned, we'll have a virtual option for people to participate in as well. We've got a number of special guests and coming through, and lunch will be served. So you don't have to be Greek to participate or a member of the Divine 9 or anything. Just come, bring your family, your friends, if you have a cell phone, and are willing to participate, you can help get out the vote. This is a great opportunity to get our young people involved in the process. We'll be offering community service hours to like high school students, college students who come out. So we want as many people as we possibly can. In the morning, we'll be calling voters across the state of New Jersey. Then we'll feed you, and so you'll have lunch. And then in the afternoon, it's going national, and we're calling voters in other states. So these are just a few of the things, maybe you're wondering if you have a small chapter like I do, hey, we're small, what can we do? These are free opportunities, nonpartisan opportunities that are open to everyone. And what we also did was, so that we would have one source of truth for sharing all of the good work that's going on and all of these resources, we created D9 Votes on Instagram, where all of these resources are available. And we have an email address, mphcvotes@gmail.com, because our individual councils have have socials and things of that nature, but that social media account is for all Divine Nine organizations across the state of New Jersey and our councils to share their good news and information of events and things of that nature. And it gives us one source of truth to share all of the resources and opportunities that we're making available for you and those in our community to get out the vote this election cycle and beyond.
So Liz, if I could add to your to your talk, is that in the afternoon, we're going to call residents in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, and Georgia.
Thank you, Source Stacy. And Source Stacy is the state social action coordinator for Sigma Gamma Rho, and she's a member of our social action committee and has been at the forefront and instrumental in all of this work that I'm speaking about right now. So thank you, Source Stacy. And thank you, Thomas, again, for the opportunity to share this information and these resources with your viewers.
Oh, no, not a problem, not a problem. I just want to quickly bring up the New Jersey website that we know is led by Lieutenant Governor Way. So as you can see, a comprehensive, easy site, vote.nj.gov. Let's do it again for practice purposes. Brings you right here to NJ Votes, and you are able to see all the information, register to vote, am I registered, track your ballot, and then also county election officials. So once you click here, you can find whatever county you live in, you can find the information that you need. So very comprehensive and available to everyone. All right, and so I want to go back to the presentation real quick because I see one of the questions. Give me 1 second. So as you can see, as we talked about, if you are dealing with someone who, if your goal is to remain nonpartisan, the strategies you do want to think about is, once again, someone may come to you with partisan language. You have to, many times it's honor, like acknowledge and pivot, right? And so an example, you may be talking to someone and they may say, you may ask them, hey, are you going to make sure you vote? And they may be like, yep, I got Sorority Harris. We're going all the way, right? You might have to just say, okay, great, good job, thank you. And or vice versa. If someone says, you ask them, are you planning to vote? They're like, yeah, I rock with Trump. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for honoring your vote, right? So at the end of the day, regardless of how people may tell you how they feel or who they're going to vote for, you have to just acknowledge that they are participating and just keep it moving. Right now, once again, you may have individuals that want you to get into partisan conversation, particularly if they're looking for guidance around who they should vote for. And so in that example, you want to make sure that you're just really staying focused on, our goal is to help you to vote. We're not here to tell you who to vote for. However, you can have conversations with them, asking them, well, what are the things that you value, and have them respond back to that. And then from there, you can redirect them to both of the campaigns where they can do their research to determine who they want to, how they determine who they want to vote for. So once again, both VP Harris and former President Trump, they have campaigns where they have their information. And so you can have individuals refer back to that, right? Many times voting, people don't always vote on policy. They tend to vote on character, right? And so many times people are looking at the character of a person, and they will make a decision on who they want to vote for based off of that. And so once again, it's really important that you are able to remain neutral and just be able to show folks where they can get the information, like vote411.org, where they can research the candidates and kind of come to the conclusion that way, right? For an example, many times people will say they vote based on the economy, but what really drives them is something more emotional, right? Whether it's immigration or abortion or something else, right? And so at the end of the day, what's really key is how do you pivot away and redirect them back to the importance of voting and keep it nonpartisan. Great. Any other questions people have from the audience? Ms. Loretta Rivers, did that help a little bit more, or did you need additional clarity?
Thank you. That was great information. But I think the next slide you are about to show about if they ask you who you're voting for. Can you...
Okay, I can bring that back up. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
And once again, because individuals see you as a trusted messenger, they are hoping that you will guide them towards who they need to vote for. And so you really want to emphasize that you guys don't endorse any candidates and that you can redirect them to resources like Vote 111. There's other resources called Ballotpedia. There's Ballot Ready. These are platforms that allow you to actually research the candidates. And they've basically compiled the policy points from the different campaigns and they have it on a centralized location. And so that is another way that you can help them find the information that they need without having to put your own personal views on the line. Because once again, we all have our personal reasons why we may vote for a candidate, and we just have to be careful not to allow that to spill over. And I think it's critical that I reemphasize that because in this hyper-partisan language and moment, as we've seen with affirmative action, what we've seen with book banning and some of these actions that are being taken, our communities are going to be targeted if we are being viewed as conveying partisan information. And so you have to be careful that you never know who's out there that is actually targeting Black and brown communities to essentially catch them slipping, if I'm going to be casual, right? And so we want to make sure that we're not caught slipping and that we're staying true to the language and the protocol of our organizations. Great. So if there's no final questions, I want to, we're at the hour mark. We want to make sure we honor the time. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this presentation. I want to thank the Social Action Committee of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I want to thank the New Jersey state chapters of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I want to thank the National Pan-Hellenic Council of Central New Jersey and the D9 Votes campaign for partnering with us on this initiative. Want to also highlight Black Voters Matter, which is an organization that is uplifting the work that we're doing here in New Jersey. And more importantly, want to thank you all as citizens for your desire to be more up to date on these issues. And once again, we will make sure to send you the presentation so that you can then share it with your network so that everyone is prepared to cast their ballot on November 5th. Thank you very much.